Killers Encore.
Cool.
The stories behind the songs.
Thank you.
Here's iHeartRadio's Miles Galloway.
It was only a kiss. It was only a kiss. I'm Miles Galloway, and this is the story of the Killers, Mr Brightside. There's quite simply nothing more fascinating in pop music than the sleeper hit. I can only imagine how a band or artist feels when they introduce themselves to the world to little to no fanfare, then have to swallow their pride, keep on plugging away, and then suddenly blow up almost retroactively. A bit like me on this podcast. I'm still waiting for it to blow up, but it's coming. A great modern example of a sleeper hit is Noah Kahan's Stick Season. That incredible track was released on July 8th, 2022, but didn't come anywhere near the Billboard Hot 100 until it blew up on TikTok in mid to late 2023, and only became a top 10 hit earlier this year. Kahan has had a loyal fan base for years, but the success of Stick Season has made him one of the most sought-after names in music right now. An overnight sensation 2 years in the making. What Kahan is experiencing now is probably something the Killers, Brandon Flowers and company, were feeling around this time in 2003. Or is it 2004? 2005? As with many sleeper hits, it's not that simple. Let me explain. The Killers were formed in Las Vegas, Nevada in 2001 by frontman Brandon Flowers, guitarist Dave Koning, and a rotating cast of drummers and bassists. Inspired by bands like Oasis, New Order, and other groups that tread the thin line between Britpop, indie rock, lo-fi, and new wave, the first track the core pair of Flowers and Koning ever wrote and recorded was a little song called Mr Brightside. When performing Mr Brightside for the first time at an open mic set in 2002, Flowers had gone on record to say that they were terrible, awful, but inspired enough to keep honing their craft and hand out demos to anyone that would listen. The Vegas Strip was notoriously difficult, the band told Much in 2004.
You know, there's a few places to play around town for bands just starting out, but it's really hard. A lot of bands break up because they can't find a place to play or can't find the right members. And
yeah.
It's tough to do in Vegas. It's tough to start a band. There isn't a lot of support. You know, you'll have to play to 10 people a lot of the time.
Do you guys consider yourselves lucky? Or do you think it's fate? Do you guys believe in that kind of thing?
Well, I think it's both. I think you have to be a little bit lucky if you're a band to get anywhere, but in a cheesy way, I think there's a little bit of fate in it, you know? I would hope.
Vegas promoter and friend Ryan Party would note that people were drinking coffee and reading the newspaper while the Killers played. Everyone was too cool for school and not paying attention to them. The Killers would slowly amass a modest local following, mostly playing gay bars on the Las Vegas Strip. In late 2002, veteran Vegas musicians drummer Ronnie Vanucci Jr. and bassist Mark Stormer joined the group and completely changed the vibes within the band. Talking to the Medium.com outlet QPoint, Stormer explained, "Once me and Ronnie joined the band, it changed. Once we started recording a new record, they ditched a lot of their old songs. We started writing together. It was around that time that we were finding this lineup and having some new songs." Aptly named tracks Desperate, Replaceable, and Under the Gun were quickly scrapped. The guys had been listening to a lot of fellow 2000 stalwart rockers. The Strokes' debut album, Is This It? And were depressed at how perfect that band sounded compared to the Killers' music, and they knew they needed to adapt and improve. When returning to the studio for the sessions that would eventually become their debut album, Hot Fuss, the only song they brought with them was their original baby, Mr Brightside. Still, in no way, shape, or form a massive act, the Killers were confident enough in their sound that when their friend Ryan Party was playing a relatively high-profile DJ set at a local gay bar one weekend, the Killers asked if they could get on the gig. Party was pretty popular in Vegas at the time and knew he would be packing the house, and that label reps weren't ever too far away from his shows. Even though the Killers weren't DJs, he described the show as having a very Killers-friendly crowd, so he put them on the bill. In a room full of, quote, scenesters and drag queens, the Killers knocked it out of the park. So much so that the poor DJ that followed them ended up playing to an empty room after the band's set. It was Las Vegas in the summer and everyone was so hot they just marched out of the venue after seeing what was assumedly the main event. With legitimate hype and exposure on their resume, doors soon began to open for the Killers. Well, sort of. It's all still pretty complicated if I'm honest, but stay with me. Soon after the DJ show feature gig, Brendan Merrick, an A&R for Warner Brothers Records, hooked up with the band and offered to shop them around. Merrick introduced them to former Green Day manager Jeff Saltzman, who would help them record proper demos and send those demos out to as many US labels as they could. The American labels all passed, but British A&R rep Alex Gilbert saw something in the Killers and referred the demos to his mate Bren Durling, who was working at a startup UK indie record label, Lizard King Records. The Lizard King top brass loved the 5-track demo and signed the band without even meeting them in July 2003. After their signing to Lizard King, the Killers were being touted as underground darlings in the UK, and it wasn't long before BBC One personality Zane Lowe took a chance on the band and premiered Mr Brightside on his radio show on August 19th, 2003, just over a month after getting their record deal. Since they were an American band signed exclusively to a British label and had no real external touring commitments back home, the Killers packed their bags and headed to London for a mini tour and played some shows at influential venues on their first trip to the UK. Not wanting to be upstaged, Island Def Jam signed the band in America. Label rep Rob Stevenson had been reading about them and was present at the aforementioned Las Vegas gay bar show, so he was familiar with their work. In order to strike while the iron was hot, Mr Brightside was officially released in the UK on September 29th, 2003, and the album Hot Fuss would be mixed and finished soon thereafter. Much spoke with Rob on the set of Mr Brightside to get his take on the discovery of the band and how he couldn't believe how great they were so quickly.
Well, I don't like to say that I discovered them. I think I was lucky enough to find them and really like them. I don't know that I necessarily discovered them. But
you totally did, Rob.
All right, fine, I did.
Okay.
Yes, it was all me. Thank you.
Okay, so what happened?
What happened was a friend of mine had been writing about the Killers in his column in a magazine, and for the longest time, I thought he was talking about this other band. And I called him up finally, and I said, "Why are you writing about this stupid band? Nobody likes that band. Why do you keep writing about them?" And he said, no, you're misreading it. It's the Killers. They're from Las Vegas. So I was like, oh, okay, can you send me the record? So he sent me the record, and, it was just one of those things where I felt like I'd won the lottery, because literally, I'd love to say that it was all me, and I put this whole thing together, but the truth of the matter was, I got the demo. And literally, on this demo was, somebody told me, Smile Like You Mean It, Mr. Brightside, and Indie Rock and Roll.
They're already superstars.
So kind of, yeah. I didn't really do a whole heck of a lot. I mean, we remixed them and did some work in the studio, but as they were on that demo is almost exactly as they are now. Wow. So I just was, driving in the car listening to this demo, and I just couldn't believe that this band hadn't been signed months ago. I got on a plane, flew out to Vegas, spent 4 days with them, and I just wanted to see if they were good enough to play this stuff live, because it was so good on record, and they were, and that was it. I mean, it was kind of off to the races, and then every other label jumped on, but we were able to sign them in the 11th hour, and I was very happy, and that was October of last year.
And they hadn't been together for a long time, right? They've only been playing since 2002?
Yeah, I think they were only together for like a year or two. I mean, I know that when they went to London in September, that was the first shows that they had played outside of Vegas, except for actually one show in Chicago, but that was it. So,
wow.
It was at this point that the Killers found themselves in a very bizarre situation. They had a major label deal, some UK indie cred with a buzzworthy single, but they weren't incredibly road-tested in their American homeland. The band would soon alleviate that by supporting bands like British Sea Power and Stellar Star on tour, and even open for Morrissey on a couple occasions. They were grabbing their opportunities with both hands, but were struggling to fully connect with audiences. As Stormer recalls, with all this happening so quickly, we were still essentially on the local club level in Vegas. But it was already starting to happen in the UK, and we were doing full-blown tours. In preparation for the early summer release of Hot Fuss, the Killers would continue to tour and go on to release their first single, Somebody Told Me. Now, you might be asking yourself at this point, first single? Somebody Told Me? Miles, you literally just told me the first single from Hot Fuss was Mr. Brightside. This entire episode is framed around it. Well, the music industry in the 2000s wasn't as connected by the internet as it is now. You may recall in Season 1 in our One Direction episode, even as recently as the early 2010s, the United Kingdom was still seen as a truly foreign land with wildly different music tastes than in North America. So as far as the label was concerned, it was almost as if Mr. Brightside didn't exist at all. Now, that doesn't necessarily answer the question, though, why the label chose Somebody Told Me as the first real single after signing to Island Def Jam. Couldn't they have just promoted Mr. Brightside? Luckily, much as Sarah Taylor asked Rob Stevenson directly.
Mr. Brightside was the song that kind of everyone was jumping on that, and they're like, who are these guys? Mr. Brightside's such a great song. The Killers are amazing. But you didn't decide to go with that for the first single. Is there a reason for that?
Well, we have a team of scientists.
A crack team of scientists?
We were monitoring women's heart rates and how high they would go up. And, somebody told me it got a higher heart rate than Mr. Brightside, so we went with that first.
That was a very good answer.
No, the real answer is just that we knew. Well, no, you never really know. I can't say I knew what Mr. Brightside was because you don't know. It's just a best guess. But we just thought Somebody Told Me had this really kind of this quality to it that if you heard it on the radio, you would kind of just look up from the radio like, what is this? Mm-hmm. More of a like cold water in the face kind of. Yeah.
But you knew what Mr. Brightside. Like, my theory is that was your secret weapon. You were holding that back because you knew that once you drew people in with the first one, they'd be dead.
That's it. That is it.
They'd be killed.
Released on March 15th, 2004, Somebody Told Me would eventually become one of the Killers' most iconic songs. But it wasn't always that way. Somebody Told Me performed decently on rock charts across the world and made its way halfway up the Billboard Hot 100. But sales were not much to write home about, and the song wouldn't even go gold on the sales charts until early 2005. It would eventually go 3 times platinum post Mr. Brightside. Maybe it's because the band hadn't toured enough, maybe the song just didn't have the it factor, or maybe the universe was telling the Killers that the first song that they wrote, the first song they recorded, and the first song they performed should have been their true first single. By the time Hot Fuss was released in June, the writing was on the wall. It was time to pull the trigger and release their secret weapon. Mr. Brightside was ready to see the light of day again. With the re-release of Mr. Brightside, as Ryan Party put it, things got huge. Released in June 2004 to coincide with the record drop, Mr. Brightside was somehow both a roll of the dice and a sure thing for the band who grew up in the world of gamblers. The song was a slow burner, a sleeper hit, if you will, taking 8 months to enter the Billboard Hot 100 at number 40, and didn't hit top 10 status until June 2005, a year or 2 after its release. On the set of the video shoot, Ronnie Vannucci Jr. told much as Sarah Taylor that, much like with the song's release itself, the video for Brightside that we all know and love, it was actually the band's second time around shooting a video.
We have 4 videos, and this is actually the second Brightside video.
Really?
We had to make like an emergency UK video.
An emergency to send over.
Yeah.
And how is that one different than this one?
This one's a lot more planned out, a lot more expensive.
Right. Who directed the first one?
A group of 3 brothers did our last Brightside video, and they called themselves Surround.
And do you remember the concept for the first Brightside video?
Yeah, it was originally just kind of supposed to be like this dark film noir, seedy type of video with evil-looking girls. We took it a step further with this one. We decided to develop the storyline a bit more.
Yeah, a little more. It's dark, but it's not. It's kind of dark, but it's not really evil or scary, right?
No. It's a little more lighthearted, but there's an underlying theme there that's dark.
The emergency UK video is really nothing to write home about, if I'm being honest. It's a low-budget, straight-up performance video with basic black and white video filters and vague gambling motifs that really scream, I suppose we kind of need a video for UK music channels if they ask for it. The real Mr. Brightside video is, of course, one of the most iconic of the decade, with a delicate Brandon Flowers and company crooning to a pale and mysterious dancer at a sexy, strange burlesque show, while a dastardly Eric Roberts sends her around to audience members to flirt and dance seductively for his own pleasure. Eric Roberts would later go on to play the dastardly husband figure in Mariah Carey's We Belong Together video. You can check out our season finale episode from Season 2 for more on that song. Roberts is fickle and abusive, and as Flowers sings, I just can't look, It's killing me. He imagines if it were him stealing a dance with her instead of the club's patrons. The video concludes with a high-stakes game of checkers at the burlesque show as the vicious cycle of longing and desire seems destined to continue. Artsy and eerie, the Mr. Brightside video is one you have to watch again and again to even begin to understand. It would go on to easily win an MTV VMA for Best New Artist in a Video and a coveted Much Music Video Award for International Video. With the video in high rotation and top 10 status on the charts, the Killers were truly out of their cage and doing just fine. In April 2005, Hot Fuss hit double platinum status in the US and went triple platinum by year's end. Critics would admit that for better or for worse, this Vegas-based baby band had secretly created one of the decade's most influential songs. Rolling Stone described the song as having anthemic majesty, while both Absolute Radio and XFM, now Radio X in the UK, would go on to call it the song of the decade. The Killers would go on to release their next single, All These Things That I've Done, in August of 2004, before re-releasing Somebody Told Me in 2005. I'm not even kidding. And this time around, Somebody Told Me went to number 3. Where was this support the first time around, America? Mr. Brightside would go on to be nominated at the 2006 Grammy Awards for Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group, but would lose to fellow sleeper hit darlings Maroon 5 for a live version of This Love. Before giving any of us a chance to exhale, the Killers would return with new music in 2006 with a grittier, critically acclaimed Springsteen-inspired record called Sam's Town. The quick turnaround of that record allowed the band to go full steam ahead, touring relentlessly, and with their third album, Day and Age, now recording in their very own Las Vegas studio, and the quirky single Human, they would sell out arenas across the world for the remainder of the decade. Although they would never truly hit the zeitgeisty heights of the early to mid-2000s again, the Killers are undeniably now rock royalty, with Mr. Brightside sitting pretty as their crown jewel. To this day, truly what makes Mr. Brightside the king of all sleeper hits is his legacy. In 2021, UK outlet The Guardian made a case for Mr. Brightside being the most overplayed song of all time, noting that you'd hear the song on the radio, in the supermarket, in the pub, the office, in a cab, thrumming through your neighbour's wall, blasted out at every party or wedding you'll attend for the rest of your life. And they weren't kidding. Mr. Brightside has the bizarre distinction in the United Kingdom of basically never leaving the charts. Seriously, that's why I moved here. I had to get away. Since its first charting in June 2004, Mr. Brightside has spent a whopping 405 non-consecutive weeks in the top 100. That's nearly 8 years. But it gets even crazier. While many songs will pop in and out of the charts on occasion, the lion's share of this song's charting history has come in the last 10 years. The track spent 35 weeks between July 2016 and March 2017 in the UK Top 100, peaking in the mid-70s before doing a couple of 10-week stints near the end of the year. After a few lean years of only hitting the UK charts for a few sporadic times between 2017 and 2020, Mr. Brightside Mania ran wild again as the pandemic hit, spending 27 plus weeks in the top 100 in 2020. By 2021, the song was spending nearly the entire year in the top 100 again, a feat repeated in 2022, 2023, and as far as I can tell, it's going to do it again this year. As this episode's being recorded, it currently sits at number 72 on the official UK singles chart. Starting the year off strong in the high 30s, it finished at number 22 on the 2023 UK singles chart. For reference, that's 4 positions higher than Doja Cat's Paint the Town Red and only 3 lower than Dua Lipa's Dance the Night from the Barbie soundtrack. When this phenomenon was first noted in 2017, Vice's Noisy blog tried to explain it by attributing the love of the song with the timeless comfort of nostalgia. It's simply a good song that can be enjoyed earnestly, and ironically, it's anthemic and hits all the cliched themes of love and love lost. Now, with a full 20 years of hindsight, it seems to me that we may truly be witnessing the birth of what might be one of the first true classic rock songs. Yes, it is a bit cheesy and dramatic both lyrically and tonally. What millennial hasn't ironically sung along to "How did it end up like this? It was only a kiss, it was only a kiss" on a karaoke night or at a friend's wedding? But what classic song isn't cheesy? Have you heard some of the lyrics the Beatles laid down? Recently released as a purchasable song in the video game Fortnite, there are undoubtedly droves of hipster mums and dads across the globe giving the old back in my day speech to a generation of young gamers and music fans alike when they hear those eager eyes coming from their kids' PS5s. I guess that's just the price they pay. Okay, I'll stop now. I'm Miles Galloway, and that was the story of The Killers' Mr. Brightside on Encore, with new episodes every Thursday. A bit of an Encore exclusive update for everyone. Back in Season 1, we talked about another one of the biggest rock hits of the early 2000s, Evanescence's Bring Me to Life. With the announcement of their cross-Canada tour with Hailstorm, Evanescence's Amy Lee sat down with our team from Encore to give us a bit of further retrospective on their massive hit Bring Me to Life more than 20 years later. Lizzie Hale also gave her thoughts on how it affected the music industry at the time and what it means to her. We've released it as a bonus companion episode, so subscribe now so you don't miss it.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more great podcasts just like these.